Here's an inside look at one of the courtrooms at the Dirksen Federal Building. This is where all your major federal trials go on in Chicago. It's open to the public. Any one of us can go. Some of the guys in the Grand Avenue neighborhood will tell you as soon as you walk into the lobby, your rights go out the window. Next case we're going to talk about is this real scumbag, Stephen Mandel, ex-Chicago cop. If you like my show, please hit like, subscribe, share with your friends, and happy holidays. Now, during the opening statements, the prosecution laid out Stephen Mandel's MO, if you will. Him and his cohorts would dress up as federal marshals. They would do a knock. They would show a fake warrant signed by a judge. They would arrest the victim, bring him back to Club Med, where they eventually would be beaten, tortured, forced over to sign over their valuables, and killed. Now, they actually had video footage of inside Club Med, inside video and audio of what these guys were planning inside the torture chamber. This guy was a serial killer, a sociopath. I can't believe the Chicago outfit didn't kill him years ago. He must have been paying them some serious street tax. This guy beat 2 murder raps. He was ranting and raving in court how the government framed him and set him up. I'll take you back to 2014. A pretty interesting trial I went to was these 2 defendants here, Willow Springs corrupt cop Gary Engel on the left and former corrupt cop Stephen Mandel on the right. They were charged in plotting to kidnap, torture, murder, and dismember a businessman. They were caught on tape with FBI informant George Michael. Here's disgraced former Chicago police officer in handcuffs, Stephen Mandel. He was the only Chicago police officer ever sentenced to death row. And this guy actually got on the stand and testified in his own defense. The government played numerous tapes where you could hear him laughing and bragging about the attempted torture and killings that he was about to do. He denied everything. Now here's an old mugshot of Stephen Mandel. Too bad they didn't keep him locked up. That night here he got pinched. He got kicked off the Chicago police force years ago for an insurance scam that involved some kind of an illegal car ring. The trial I went to, though, he was 63 years old, and they have him with 8 counts. They had him on dozens of FBI recordings, him talking and bragging about his crimes. Here's one of the luckiest men in Chicago, businessman from Riverside, Illinois, Stephen Campbell. He was their intended victim. Their goal was to kidnap him, bring him back to Club Med, where he'd be tortured. He'd have to disclose his banking information, sign over his real estate, his businesses. Then they'd eventually kill him and dismember him. But eventually the plot was foiled. Thank God. Now, back in the day, even today, this is probably one of the places to be seen. Rumor has it that the feds were watching this place and also Richard's Bar next door because of all the movers and shakers that like to wine and dine here. The prosecution stated that Stephen Mandel met with A.V., Bobby Pinozzo, and several other Chicago associates for lunch and dinner on several occasions. The government alleged that Stephen Mandel met with this guy here, A.V., several times at La Scarola restaurant. And at one day during dinner, he asked permission if he could kidnap, torture, and kill 2 businessmen. One of them, the owner of Polecat Strip Clubs in Bridgeview, Illinois, was a good friend of A.V.'s. A.V. told him no, and according to the prosecution, gave him a tongue lashing and an earful. Here's Bobby Pinozzo, or Bobby P. Joey Lombardo used to call this guy Pinocchio. Joey got a kick out of the way he lied and was able to con people and bullshit them. According to the prosecution, Bobby P. met with Steve Mandel several times at La Scarola. And I remember years ago, Bobby P. pointing his finger in Steve's face, yelling at him. I had no idea what was going on. I kept out of it, but I'll never forget it. Now, this former psychopath cop, he had quite the resume. Going back to before he was indicted at this trial, he was charged with plotting to kill an outfit-connected strip club owner in Bridgeview called Polecats. Somehow, the jury found him not guilty, and then in 1986, he was the prime suspect in the killing of his own father. Now here we got the late, great Gio Ruggiero, a world-renowned chef from Sicily. This poor man was found dead at his home. His safe was broken into, and the prime suspect was Stephen Mandel. This poor guy never got justice. The crime today was unsolved, but the government played tapes of Mandel bragging about the murder of Gio. Now here's some of the actual evidence the prosecution showed. He built an actual torture chamber on the north side of Chicago called Club Med. It included saws, grinders, cutting tools, and various other tools that they were going to use on potential victims. They were going to get them there, kidnap them, torture them, have them sign over real estate, get their bank accounts, and eventually kill them and dismember them. Now, during the trial, the government said that Stephen Mandel and Gary Engel, the two defendants in this case, that their goal was to dress up as federal marshals, arrest their targets, basically kidnap them, and bring them to a place up north on Devon called Club Med. And inside, they actually built their own torture chamber with various cutting tools to kill their victims. Now on the left here, I'm forgetting his name, but he was one of the many victims, extortion victims of Stephen Mandel. And I'll never forget, man, seeing this scumbag on the stand in his own defense. He basically said regarding the tapes that it was just talk, that he was just bullshitting the guy. He actually made the mistake to try to go toe-to-toe with the prosecutor, would be raising his voice, and you could see the real nastiness in this man come out the more he talked on the stand. Now, a big surprise to me at this trial is when the prosecutor said that he was an associate of the Elmwood Park crew. I guess they had him under surveillance, meet with some of the Elmwood Park guys, and obviously in Grand Avenue as well. But it just blows my mind how some of these outfit guys hang out with such lowlifes. Look at Gus Alex doing business with Lenny Patrick, or Rocky and Felice doing business with that scumbag BJ Jehoda. Two fine attorneys here on the left. The prosecutor in this case, Bahar Rashid. I seen him put away Mike Sarno and his crew. During opening statements, he held up a meat cleaver to show one of the torture tools that Mandel would use. I remember also bumping into him at the U2 concert, believe it or not. And on the right, my good friend, the top defensive attorney, Damien Cheros. He represented Mark Polkman, Blagojevich, and several others. Here, Judge Amy St. Eve, the federal judge at the Dirksen Federal Building, she presided over the Mandel trial. She was appalled. She said his actions were evil. He was guilty of committing barbaric crimes and had a total disregard for human life. Steve's lawyers were asking for 16 years in prison. The judge gave him life in prison. She said, "I wish I could give you more time." Now, the judge wouldn't allow this into evidence, but she did allow it during the sentencing phase. Stephen Mandel was actually convicted of killing a drug dealer in Missouri and actually killing the trucking executive, Jimmy Pellegrino, in Chicago. Both of these convictions were tossed in 2005. Can you imagine a sick, evil man like this getting two murder convictions tossed? Now, at the end, the judge agreed with the jury. He was found guilty on all counts. He showed absolutely no remorse, and he was sentenced to life in prison. And I'll never forget, he actually thanked the judge and wished her a Merry Christmas. His counterpart, ex-Willow Springs policeman Gary Engel, ended up dying in his prison cell in 2012. I like to sit next to the courtroom artists if I can, take a quick peek at some of their drawings. And here on the right, in the orange prison jumpsuit, you can see how terrible Mandel looks. During sentencing, he went on a rant, accused the government of framing him for the 2 murders that he was acquitted of. On the left, though, he had a fine defense attorney, Frank LaPuma. This guy represented the top Chicago brass and several top gang members.